Every now and then we hear a scary story on the news about a plane which has vanished. Now, most of the time there's a malfunction on the plane and it simply falls into the sea. Later on, wreckage is found and we know exactly what happened. But in a few select cases, we have no idea what happened. This flight, named Santiago Airlines Flight 513, took off in 1954. The flight should have taken 18 hours, but instead it took 35 years. I'm Charlie and today we're going to look at a plane that landed with 92 skeletons on board. But before we take off, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too. The day was the 4th of September 1954 in Aachen, West Germany. At this time, Germany was split into two, East and West. The Soviet Union controlled the East and the Western world controlled the West. You could not get any flights out of East Germany, but you could out of West Germany. So one day a plane took off and it was heading for Brazil. To be specific, Porto Alegre, Brazil, the capital city of Rio Grande do Sul. When the plane took off, there was nothing abnormal about the people on it or the plane itself. And one day before this flight, the same plane, Santiago Flight 513, had taken many people around the world. But on the fateful day of the 4th of September, the flight took off with 88 passengers and 4 crew members. The plane was being successfully tracked using its radar until all of a sudden it went off. The plane's radar went off over the Atlantic Ocean, so naturally at first air traffic controllers were worried it may have fallen into the ocean. Emergency service teams were instantly sent to the area. They used light aircrafts to fly very close to the water to see any wreckage that may be bobbing in the sea. And of course, they also used many rescue boats, which could see things from eye level. However, none of that worked, so they splashed out on hiring a submarine. Of course, the families were crushed and also very confused as to what happened to their loved ones. But sadly, all the money they spent on a rescue submarine was pointless, as they found nothing. For many years, the commissioners simply told the families they had no idea what happened to the boat. But they said they were 99% sure that the boat had crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. Because they had no wreckage, they could give no explanation as to how this happened. But that was the official storyline until the 12th of October 1989. You may wonder what happened 35 years later to change this entire story. Well, it all happened at Porto Alegre Airport, the airport the plane should have gone to 35 years prior. It was a normal day checking the radars in the air traffic control tower, but that was when air traffic controllers were all very confused. Out of nowhere on their radar, a plane appeared to pop up. Air traffic controllers tried to radio into the plane, demanding to know why on earth the plane had flown into their airspace with no warning. They had a schedule of the flights coming in for that day, and there was no flight at this scheduled time. But as the plane got closer and closer to the airport, they could see it not just on their radar, but with their own eyes. Out of the window, the controllers had to do a double take when they realized what this aircraft was. Their jaws nearly dropped when they began to discover it belonged to Santiago Airlines. They could see this by the large Santiago Airlines logo on the side of the plane. You may think, what's the big deal, an airline landing at an airport? But the weird thing was, Santiago Airlines shut its doors in 1956. Of course, this was 33 years after that date. The aircraft also looked physically old, not like a normal aircraft of the late 80s. The controllers tried to radio in some more, but there was no signal available. They made sure to clear any airplanes out the way to make sure they had a safe landing no matter who was on board. The airplane landed and security vehicles were scrambled to open up the doors and see who was inside. But for some reason the doors would not open. Instead, they used a stair lift and opened up the doors themselves. And that's when airport authorities found something even more stunning. Inside were these skeletons of 92 people buckled into their seats. The bizarre thing was, the engine was still humming. The skeleton of Captain Miguel Victor Curie was found in the pilot's seat. His hands were still on the controls and the engine was running. You may think this sounds like something from a movie, but here's where it gets crazy. Many say that Santiago Flight 513 was a Brazilian government cover-up. The Brazilian government did actually investigate this very strange occurrence, but they did not offer any explanations or even any theories. All officials ever said was that the plane had appeared suddenly in the skies and landed successfully. But because of how brash they were about this, many say that this is probably a government cover-up. They suspect that the Brazilian government was somehow involved in the disappearance of Flight 513. They also took away all of the evidence and it was destroyed. The government were also criticized in the first place for their unresponsiveness when the plane disappeared. and also how they seem to investigate everything in great secrecy. One physics professor from Porto Alegre named Rodrigo de Manhan said the public has a right to know exactly what happened to this plane. He said the public should know everything and that the government has a duty to tell them. People like this physics professor have also been joined by others calling for full disclosure. One researcher named Dr. Celso Atello says the government is hiding some big evidence. But his theory is slightly different, and it involves wormholes. He claims that wormholes may have existed for more than 3 decades. But worldwide governments, including the Brazilian government, have been covering it up. Dr. Atello says it was piloted by the skeleton of its captain and all of the crew and passengers were not alive. He also scolds officials, saying they don't want to discuss the explanations for what happened. And he also says they cannot deny this airplane defied the laws of physics, space, and time. But you're probably wondering, what exactly is a wormhole? Well, every time a plane goes missing, wormholes are often brought up. Scientific American says that wormholes are solutions to Einstein's field equations for gravity. They basically act as tunnels and connect points in time and space. This means a trip through a wormhole could take much less or much more time than a trip through normal space. They're basically like portals or shortcuts in space-time. And this isn't just some kind of theory. Notable scientists like Stephen Hawking have said that wormholes may really exist. He says there are many things humans don't yet know about space and time, and many also attribute wormholes to the disappearances of planes and boats over the Bermuda Triangle. So perhaps if it really was a wormhole that took up Flight 513, maybe that explains many of the mysteries about the Bermuda Triangle too. This would actually explain how the plane was found with skeletons on board. Perhaps humans still age through wormholes, seeing as this flight took much longer than was expected. Remember, this flight was supposed to take 18 hours but took 35 years instead. Some say the entire story of Flight 513 is a total hoax. They say that the air traffic controllers simply got confused and saw something else. Or maybe they just made everything up for no reason. But how many disappearing aircraft can we really have before people stop calling them hoaxes? It's not unheard of for planes to disappear out of thin air before, but usually at a minimum some debris or luggage is found somewhere. But because of the lack of information given out by the government, Santiago Flight 513 is still one of the world's greatest mysteries. But now it's time to make your opinion heard. What do you think is the explanation for this mystery? Do you think the plane simply crashed into the ocean and the air traffic controllers saw something else? Do you think it was a Brazilian government cover-up? Or do you think a wormhole maybe swallowed up this plane and spat it back out 35 years later? Vote in the poll in the top right corner and let me know. If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.